Dr. Mona, we deeply admire your tenacity, your leadership, and your impact in this work. It is with deep humility and gratitude that we present the Smith Nature Symposium Leadership Award to you. Well, 1 second. It is really deeply humbling, and we are so grateful you took time out of your incredible schedule to be with us. But please accept this award created by our one and only Heeyoung Kim, internationally renowned botanical artist and founder of the Botanical Art Academy here at Brushwood Center. Heeyoung is a talented teacher whose work resides in the collection of King Charles, among many others. So at this time, we welcome you to the stage.
Wow. It is such an honor to be here with all of you for a chance to kind of share my story and to share the wonderful, amazing, incredible ripple effects of this work. So I never knew that when I stood up as a pediatrician of Flint a few years ago and kind of sounded the alarm on the environmental injustice that we were having, that I would be able to be here and to be in rooms and to be in amazing places to make an impact across the country. So it was mentioned just a few days ago, the EPA finalized a water rule that was 30 years in the making. 30 years in the making, which has so much relevance to this city because Chicago, as you probably know, has the most lead lines in the country. And every day, millions of children are drinking through these straws that are poisonous. They're neurotoxins that have no safe level. But the beauty of our work in Flint is that we opened the nation's eyes. These are issues that have been going on way before my work, but because of our advocacy, because of our stubbornness, because of our loudness, we brought this issue to light, and we have been able to make a positive impact on the lives of children all over, which is amazing. There is more work that needs to be done. Thank you. There's a lot more that we need to do, and that's why I am just so humbled to be here and to learn about all the work that you are doing. When I heard our beautiful young people who received scholarships share their stories, I literally got goosebumps. I hope you all did, because I felt like yesterday I was them. I started out in high school as a little environmental activist, a tree-hugging environmental activist, recycling. We used to put on plays for the elementary school, and I was always Mother Earth, which is kind of weird. And then we got involved with a local community organization called Clean Air Please. And it was run by this amazing single mom nurse who was seeing that in a lot of her patients, they were having problems breathing, and this community had higher rates of asthma, and adults had higher rates of COPD, or respiratory problem. And it happened to be a community that was predominantly minority, which is what we call environmental injustice. So my high school club got involved in this effort in this local community with this community group to help shut down a local incinerator. And I literally couldn't drive, and we didn't have cell phones, and my parents would drop us off to the local library and like, we'll pick you up in 2 hours, don't get arrested. And we would door knock and we would organize, and I was like 14 years old, right? Just like these guys. And I began to understand at that really young age the connection between environment and health. The fact that not everybody is equally burdened by environmental badness, right? It's usually poor people and people of color that are disproportionately burdened by that badness. And then we organized and organized and organized, and we finally worked to elect a state rep from our kind of group to the state capitol. And the very first thing that he did in a bipartisan way was to pass a law that says you can't operate an incinerator within a certain radius of a school. It was in the backyard of an elementary school and a senior center. And that law passed in a bipartisan way, and for 30 years that incinerator has been shut. So that lesson also taught me that government can work, right? A lot of you think of the Flint story and think of it's a failure of government, right? Of every level, and it was. But part of that story, and part of the story that was embedded in me when I was a kid, is that government has this amazing power to right historic wrongs and to protect the environment, and most importantly, to protect our children. So I was one of these kids. So please know that the investment that you are making in our children, a few decades later, you're going to see them go out and continue their amazing advocacy to work and help other communities. This impact is multiplicative. So once again, I am so grateful to be here. I am so grateful to be in this amazing room of folks who care. Every single person I've met today, you care so much. Thank you for caring. Thank you for investing in environmental work, in arts work, and its interconnectedness. Thank you for enabling so many young people to get them exposed to these different places, to see the world differently, to light that spark, that passion, so that they can go out and be change makers just like all of you are. So once again, thank you. It's an incredible, humbling honor to be here with all of you. Thank you.
We're not letting her go yet. You can all sit down. If you can, after that, aren't you so elated you feel like you're going to fly to the top of the ceiling? Would you please have a seat here? Bill's going to be here. I'll be over here.
This is the home of Oprah, so we have conversations, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
and these very.
Yes.
I think you have the same height problem I do. Sit forward. I know, otherwise we'll be like lost completely in these chairs.
We are chasing a clock here because we
Yes,
want to get
I have
you
a flight soon, yes.
but we've got 15 minutes.
Oh, it's gonna be
enough time,
amazing.
yeah, for some kids.
Let's give them a round of applause. Aren't they amazing? Amazing. Amazing. Incredible. I'm coming back for the garden tour.
Okay, you're
What's-
anytime.
What so impresses me is that you're not a journalist, and you didn't start out that way, but you had the goods, the truth, and you had the research, and you know exactly what had to be done. So usually there's a saturation period when you convince others, and it looks like you're looking up at the mountain and you're never going to make it. What was the point at which you kind of said, okay,
Yeah.
we've done it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And never kind of in the moment did I think that anything would change. I knew we were fighting an uphill battle. People told us this was impossible, that it was impossible to change the water, that the pipeline was sold, that there was no way. And everybody before me who had raised alarms, the moms, the amazing moms, the activists, the pastors, the journalists, which were unsung heroes, the water scientists, everybody who had raised their hand and said something was wrong was dismissed and denied. But then a doctor spoke with a white coat with a lot of degrees after her name, and she shared science. And can you guys imagine like being in a public health crisis and not listening to science? Okay. Oh, I love you guys. Okay, so we all recently went through that with COVID and the climate change, and there's a lot of issues. So I got up at a press conference at a podium just like this at a hospital, and it was kind of an academic no-no because, and I'm sure there's academics in the audience, like how are we supposed to share research? What are we supposed to do when we how long does a journal publication take? The rest of your life. So I've received so many humbling accolades, and I think my favorite was an award I got from MIT called the Disobedience Award. For being academically disobedient and not going through that peer review process and sharing this research at a press conference because it was a public health emergency and kids were in harm's way. So I think when research, when numbers, when science was shared, that kids were being hurt. That finally caught the attention of the media.
Right.
So it was not science that spoke truth to power. I like to think it was. It was the voice of media. And literally so grateful to journalists. And people often ask me, like, well, how can I change the world? I'm like, subscribe to your local paper. Go into journalism. Support your journalists. So we can have eyes on the ground for the injustices that are happening all around us.
Yeah, the kids. Kids make the difference.
Yes, and I have a question here from Erick Rodriguez, who was one of our
Erick.
recipients tonight.
Yes.
So impressive. Going to follow
Another
in your
round of
footsteps.
applause for Erick and Kenith. Amazing. They're over there.
And he asks, who would you say has inspired you to be the person that you are today? And I think this is particularly wonderful because when I read your book, as I think was noted earlier, it's not just a treatise on the Flint story, it's also your story. And I got to meet so many of the people that influenced your life. I don't know if you can choose one or tell a little bit of background.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you all have a book in my book in your totes. I never intended to be an author. That's not why I went to medical school. But then I never intended to be at the center of kind of one of the most emblematic environmental and public health crises. So I didn't want to write a book. I said no for a really long time. Like, people were coming up to me, like agents and screenwriters and publishers and editors, and they're like, write a book. I'm like, go the fuck away. Like, I'm so busy. Like, sorry, I know it's one baby. I'm sorry. I'm like, go away. I just worked so hard, like, and neglected my family and my work to uncover this crisis. There's no way that I'm going to write a book. And then I finally met my editor, who's a gift, who publishes a lot of social justice books, and people of color. And that kind of convinced me that this wasn't going to be about selling books, but it was going to be about sharing a really important story. Not just about me, but really about all of us and who we want to be. So I started writing a book, just kind of first-hand account, being at the center of this crisis, uncovering this work, doing science. And there was like p-values in this book, which is crazy, and it's still a page-turner. On the cover of the book, Oprah said it has the gripping intrigue of a Grisham thriller. So I had wine. Okay, so when I started writing the book, it was just going to be about the work. And then it was really hard to tell you about the work and without telling you who I was and where I came from. So the book is very much also kind of a memoir. The very first sentence of the book is, I am Iraqi. I wasn't born here. So I'm an immigrant, came here when I was 5. I wasn't supposed to be in this country. But we, like many immigrants, came here for that freedom, opportunity, democracy. And when I got here, Lady Liberty's arms were open pretty wide. Not as much anymore. So the book also kind of reflects on this kind of long history of social justice in my family. Which was an important story to share then and an important story to share now as we think about the contribution of immigrants and especially how we think about folks from the Arab world. Who kind of inspired me? So there's so many of my heroes in this book, and I pay tribute to them, people that walked with me, people that taught me, people that walked before me. And I'm going to call out a hero that has some Chicago connection. One of the heroes I talk in my book is Alice Hamilton. Has anybody heard of Alice Hamilton? Okay, she was a badass. In 1893, she graduated from medical school from University of Michigan, and then she went to Chicago to work with Jane Addams in the settlement houses. And it was here that she started caring for a lot of immigrants and poor people and started to make connections between, oh my gosh, this person is like, sick because of stuff they're exposed to in their jobs. Like people that were working with mercury, making hats, were gone mad hatters. And the people that working with lead had like seizures and tremors and neurological problems. So she quickly became, here in Chicago, the mother of the field of occupational medicine, was the very first woman professor at Harvard. So Kenith, I want you to find the statue of her. There's a statue of her at Harvard. I gave the commencement address at Harvard Medical School a few years ago, and I talked about Alice Hamilton, because when she went to Harvard as the first woman professor, they did not let her march in commencement. So I had all the women faculty stand up. They didn't let her go to football, but whatever. And she couldn't go to the faculty club. Anyways, I'm digressing. So Alice Hamilton was a hero. She went after the lead industry in the 1920s when they were putting lead in gasoline. And she said this is going to be the greatest public health disaster. And they called her hysterical, which they often do to women. And they told her she should go back to knitting. And they told her that lead was a gift from God. And she, they won. The powers that be won. But she is absolutely one of my heroes whose shoulders that I stand on. She was an expert in this work a century ago. She often used media to her benefit. She was an advocate. She was here in Chicago fighting for our most vulnerable.
Well, thank you for introducing her to me. I did not know. And I have to say, I love your digressions. Never stop them. I want to tell you one other thing just quickly about this book, and then Bill has another question for you, and I know you have to leave. I knew I was going to love this book when I opened it, and it was dedicated to the children of Flint with a quote from Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, another doctor who's amazing.
Which says, unless someone like you cares a lot, a whole lot, awful lot, I'm sorry, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to be better. It's just not.
The Lorax.
Yeah,
Very
it was great. And I think, Bill, you have a question?
Tell us about RX Kids.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to tell you about ARC's Kids. So I'm still a pediatrician in Flint, still taking care of kiddos. I get to do some amazing advocacy work, national policy work. I run this big initiative called the Pediatric Public Health Initiative, and we've thrown it so much at our children. I run the Flint Registry, which is funded by the CDC to see how kids are doing and to get them connected to support services like, trauma-informed care and developmental support and literacy support, all these amazing things. And, it's hard because a lot of what I do and a lot of what medicine does and a lot of what public health does is a lot of Band-Aiding, and we wish we could do more prevention. So in the same spirit of us not being okay with poisoned water, because that's the story of Flint. Yes, it is a story of a crisis, but I want you to go away remembering that it is an amazing story of resistance. It is a story how folks came together and said, no, we are not accepting the status quo, and worked together to build hope. And in that same spirit, we are no longer okay with another toxin that really afflicts our kiddos. And that toxin is poverty. Flint is the poorest city in the state of Michigan. It actually has the highest child poverty rate in the nation, almost 69%. And we know the science when babies especially are born into poverty and grow up in poverty, when it's early, chronic, and concentrated, it impacts your development and your whole life course trajectory. And for so long as a pediatrician, I'm like, what can I do about poverty? I can't solve poverty. But you know what? We can. There's been this gap in imagination. We don't have to be okay with the way things are now. So we created something called RX Kids, which is a prescription for health, hope, and opportunity. And as of January, RX Kids is our nation's first universal, citywide, maternal and infant cash prescription program. Amazing. Every pregnant mom, every single pregnant person in Flint gets $1,500 in mid-pregnancy. And then once a baby's born, it's $6,000 for the first year of life, $500 a month for the first 12 months. We have prescribed $4 million in cash to over 1,000 mamas, and we're amazing. And I wrote the first two grants I wrote for this were rejected. The first comment was, this is a great idea, but not feasible. And my response was profanity. I'm like, I'm doing this. We are doing this. In less than 2 years, I've been able to raise over $100 million. Amazing. In a beautiful public-private partnership, we have leveraged state TANF dollars, we have used ARPA dollars, we have foundation and corporate dollars. We're still raising money. The governor of Michigan, based on our success in Flint, has given us $20 more million to expand this to other Michigan communities. And if you've been paying attention to the news, Vice President Harris included a $6,000 newborn credit in her policy, and that came from us. Amazing, amazing. So that is what RX Kids is. It's another example of how, once again, we can open our eyes to injustices, how we can fill that gap in imagination, how we don't have to be okay with the status quo, and we can fight better for our babies. That one baby is gone. Did you guys see that beautiful baby? But like, I have the joy of taking care of our babies. And
We auctioned it off.
What's that?
We auctioned it off.
We get carried away.
Our babies, like, if you guys, our babies are just precious, right? Like, and when we have the privilege of being with our little baby, and in clinic, when I'm holding a little baby, and when I know that my baby's in Flint, their life expectancy is 20 years based on their zip code, different from another part of our county, not okay. That we can absolutely do better on behalf of our babies and babies everywhere.
How about a nice goodbye for
Love you all. You're amazing. Give more to the Brushwood Center.
Dr. Mona Hanna.